January 897. The Basilica of St. John Lateran in Rome. Imagine a courtroom drama, but instead of a slick defense attorney, the defendant is a 9-month-old rotting corpse. This is Pope Formosus. He's dead. But his successor, Pope Stephen VI, has dug him up, dressed him in full papal gear, and put him on trial. Why? Welcome to the Cadaver Synod, the original literal cancel culture. The 9th century was a terrible time to be alive, but it was an even worse time to be dead. The trial of Pope Formosus, officially known as the Synod Horrenda, and yes, that translates exactly how you think it does, was attended by high-ranking clergy members. They were forced to sit there, inhaling the aroma of their former boss, while the current boss screamed at his remains. You think your office meetings are toxic? Imagine the HR nightmare of being subpoenaed to testify against a skeleton. The sheer absurdity of this event makes it one of the most infamous moments in papal history. To understand how we got to Weekend at Bernie's, Vatican edition, we have to look at the politics. Formosus ruled the Papal States from 891 until he successfully died of a stroke in 896. But his reign was a mess. The Carolingian dynasty was collapsing, and Italy was a free-for-all of warring noble families. The papacy wasn't just a spiritual role, it was the ultimate political prize. Formosus spent his time intervening in massive power struggles across the Holy Roman Empire and West Francia. He was a kingmaker, and kingmakers make enemies, nasty ones. Formosus made his post-fatal mistake by backing the wrong horse. He sided with a Germanic king named Arnulf of Carinthia for the Italian throne, directly screwing over a powerful local noble named Lambert of Spoleto. When Formosus died, he was buried in St. Peter's Basilica. Safe, right? Wrong. The Spoleto family eventually seized control of Rome and installed their own guy, Pope Stephen VI. Stephen wasn't just a political rival. He was a fanatic with a massive grudge. He was motivated by pure, unadulterated revenge. And he wanted to destroy Formosus so completely that history itself would forget him. But how do you ruin a dead man? You can't execute him. He's already beat you to it. Stephen VI decided that standard defamation wasn't enough. He needed a spectacle. He ordered Formosus's body exhumed. This wasn't a quick turnaround. Formosus had been in the ground for 9 months. Let me repeat that. 9 months in the Italian climate. The corpse was dragged out of its tomb, hauled across Rome to the Basilica of St. John Lateran, and shoved into a chair. They actually dressed the rotting remains in the heavy, ornate papal vestments. It was a macabre puppet show designed to shock and awe. Now, a trial requires a defense. Stephen VI, committed to the bit, appointed a terrified 18-year-old deacon to speak on behalf of the corpse. Imagine that internship. Hey kid, your job today is to cross-examine the Pope and your client is a skeleton. Good luck. Stephen screamed questions at the body. Why did you usurp the universal Roman See in such a spirit of ambition? The corpse, exercising its constitutional right to remain silent, said nothing. The deacon reportedly stammered out weak apologies while trying not to vomit. It was a kangaroo court where the kangaroo was dead. So what were the actual charges? What heinous crime justifies digging up a pontiff? Murder? Heresy? No, Formosus was judged for an HR violation. Before becoming pope, he was the Bishop of Portus. The main charge was that he illegally moved from one bishopric to another, an elevated role, which was technically against church law at the time. That's it, a zoning violation. For this, Stephen VI subjected a corpse to a public trial. It wasn't about the law, it was about invalidating everything Formosus had done, including ordaining Stephen himself. It was a political wipeout, a total system reset. Unsurprisingly, the dead man lost the case. Stephen VI officially pronounced Formosus guilty of failing to uphold the ideals of the Church. All of his acts and ordinations were declared invalid. But Stephen wasn't done. The verdict was just the warm-up. He ordered the papal vestments stripped from the body. Then, in a final act of surgical spite, he had the 3 fingers of Formosus's right hand, the fingers used to give blessings, hacked off. It was a physical unpoping, the ultimate symbol of stripping away a man's legacy, 1 digit at a time. The absurdity and corruption of the medieval Catholic Church, perfectly encapsulated in a single, gruesome act. The mutilated corpse was then dragged through the streets of Rome and dumped into a pauper's grave. But even that wasn't enough for Stephen. Shortly after, he had the body dug up again because why stop at 1 exhumation? And thrown directly into the Tiber River. It was the ultimate disrespect, meant to literally wash away any trace of Formosus from the earth. The Cadaver Synod was a masterclass in how to turn a political rival into a public spectacle. It was visually striking, completely bizarre, and entirely successful in making Stephen VI look like the toughest guy in Rome, for about 5 minutes. Here is the problem with performing deeply psychotic acts in public. The public tends to notice. The Cadaver Synod was widely condemned by the Christian community. The people of Rome were used to political corruption, but digging up a pope and chopping his fingers off was a bridge too far. Rumors started spreading that Formosus's body had washed ashore and started performing miracles. Stephen VI had tried to destroy a man, but he accidentally created a martyr. The backlash was immediate and violent. The Cadaver Synod caused a massive decline in the prestige and authority of the papacy. It was a PR disaster of biblical proportions. Stephen's judgment of Formosus led directly to his own downfall. In August 897, just months after the synod, the people of Rome revolted. They had had enough of the mad pope. Stephen VI was deposed, stripped of his own papal insignia, and thrown into a dungeon. And there, in the dark, he was strangled to death. It was a dramatic and ironic end for a man who thought he could control the narrative by putting a corpse on trial. He instigated the Cadaver Synod to secure his power, and it ended up tightening a rope around his neck. Karma is rarely this efficient. The immediate aftermath was a scramble to clean up the mess. Stephen VI was succeeded by Pope Romanus. Romanus took one look at the situation, realized it was the worst PR crisis in church history, and immediately annulled all the proceedings of the Cadaver Synod. He officially overturned the verdict against Pope Formosus. The dead man was legally exonerated. It was a necessary step to restore some sanity to the institution. The Cadaver Synod marked an absolute low point in the history of the papacy, a moment when the pursuit of power entirely eclipsed any pretense of spiritual authority. The story has a strangely peaceful epilogue. The body of Pope Formosus, which had supposedly been recovered from the river by a monk, was brought back to Rome. It was eventually reburied in St. Peter's Basilica, exactly where it started. He got his dignity back, or at least as much dignity as you can have when you're missing 3 fingers and have been dunked in a river. But the legacy of the Cadaver Synod lingered. It left a permanent stain. In fact, due to the immense controversy, no other pope has ever taken the papal name Formosus. The name itself became radioactive. You think this is ancient history, just medieval lunatics doing medieval things. But look at us now. We don't drag corpses into courtrooms anymore, it's too messy. Instead, we dig up decade-old tweets. We exhume past mistakes, prop them up in the digital square, and demand a public trial for someone who effectively no longer exists. The Cadaver Synod was just the beta test for cancel culture. It's the same impulse, the desire to totally obliterate an enemy's legacy, not just defeat them. Pope Stephen VI was just ahead of his time. He didn't need a screenshot. He brought the whole skeleton.